things are getting really tense in the Middle East. Right now, a high-stakes standoff between the United States and Iran is heating up with both military moves and a serious war of words. So in this explainer, we're going to break down what's happening, what each side is claiming, and, where this could all be headed.
Okay, so it all kicks off with a really big, deliberate move. A U.S. aircraft carrier strike group, that's a massive symbol of American military power, has just sailed into the region. And let's be clear, this isn't just some routine deployment. No, this is a message.
And a move like that immediately makes you ask the big question, right? Is this just a show of force, a way to send a message to Iran? Or is this something way more dangerous? Is this an actual step towards a real shooting war? The stakes here are just incredibly high.
All right, so let's start right there with that opening move, the American warship. To really get why this matters so much, we have to look at exactly where it's gone.
So, according to a U.S. official, the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group sailed into what are called CENTCOM waters. That stands for U.S. Central Command. Now, this isn't just any patch of ocean. This area is basically the strategic heart of the entire Middle East. It covers critical shipping lanes for the world's oil, like the famous Strait of Hormuz. So yeah, parking an aircraft carrier right here, that is a huge signal in one of the most watched and most contested spots on the planet.
And you can bet Iran's response came fast. And it was defiant. They didn't waste any time. This quote from their foreign ministry spokesperson, well, it says it all. They're trying to project total strength. They're basically telling the U.S. and the rest of the world, we are not scared of your warship.
But it's not just about ships in the water. This military posturing is happening at the same time as this intense war of words. You've got both Washington and Tehran fighting to control the story, and they're offering completely different takes on what's going on.
So first, let's look at the story coming from the White House. From their point of view, all that defying talk from Iran, it doesn't really line up with what they say is happening behind closed doors.
Okay, so according to reports on President Trump's statements, the view from Washington is that Iran is basically in chaos right now, or as they put it, in flux. The claim is that Iran's been the one calling, that they want to talk, and that at the end of the day, Iran wants a deal. It paints a pretty clear picture, right? A country being forced to the table because they're in a weak spot.
Yeah, but that is not the story you're hearing from Tehran. Not even close. They're pushing back hard on this idea that they're desperate. Instead, they're sending a message of strength, of readiness, of being completely resolved.
And this quote, it just completely contradicts what the White House is saying. It's the polar opposite. They're not talking about wanting a deal because they're desperate. No, Iran's message is, we can absolutely defend ourselves, and you better believe we are watching every single move you make. It's a total standoff.
But to really get the full picture here, we have to look inside Iran itself. Because all this tension with the U.S. is happening while there's major unrest at home. And the story of that situation is told in some really, really different numbers.
So what exactly is happening on the ground in Iran? Well, the source material we're looking at points to a recent and pretty severe crackdown on protesters. The thing is, the details of what happened, well, they're intensely debated.
This chart really shows you the giant gap in the stories being told about this protest crackdown. On one side, you have the Iranian government. Their official number is 3,000 casualties. But then you have reports coming from the protesters themselves, and they tell a totally different, much grimmer story, with casualty numbers that could be as high as 30,000. So why such a massive difference? Well, it's pretty classic. You've got a government that controls information tightly on one side, and activists trying to get their story out to the world on the other. The difference is just staggering.
Let's just pause on that higher number for a second. 30,000. If that number is anywhere close to being accurate, we're talking about what the source material calls a potential massacre. And having a crisis like that happening internally, well, it adds a whole other level of pressure and context to everything Iran does on the world stage.
Okay, so when you put it all together, the military moves, the back-and-forth statements, the chaos inside Iran, it brings us to this really critical moment. The whole situation feels like it's balanced on a knife's edge, and it could tip in one of two very different directions.
To put it simply, there are two ways this can go from here. Path 1 leads to more escalation, and maybe even conflict. Path 2 leads to diplomacy, and maybe, just maybe, some kind of deal.
So on one side, you've got the path to escalation.
That's being fed by all this military posturing and new weapons being sent to allies in the region. But on the other side, U.S. officials are saying that a path to de-escalation is still there, that the door for diplomacy is still open. But you got to add a "for now" to the end of that.
And that leaves all of us with the big, unavoidable question. You've got this rising military pressure on one side and this sliver of hope for diplomacy on the other. It is a really volatile mix. So the crucial question isn't really if something's going to give, but which of these two paths is the one that's going to be taken.